Hi, I'm Steve from the Stonecrafting Workshop. Welcome. One of the things I do quite a lot of is rock tumbling. I'm getting really interested in it as a hobby. My wife would say obsessed, but I think that's a bit strong. So, and I've been using a National Geographic rock tumbler for the last 15 or 18 months, something like that. And I want to do more. I want to expand more and do more tumbling. So I bought myself a new machine. And this is it. It's the Beach £3 rock tumbler. And what we'll do, we'll have a look at the machine. In this video, what we'll do is have a look at the machine and see how it's made and what have you. And then we'll talk about the actual rock tumbling. I'm going to go through a process of rock tumbling completely from start to finish. And I'll post that in another video, so that you can see the thing actually working and functioning and what have you. So let's have a look at this machine. I'm quite interested myself to have a look. So this is it, the £3 Beach rock tumbler. It's British made. It's 240 volt with a 15 watt motor. Let's have a quick look around it, and you can see that it's a pretty simply designed machine, and that's quite reassuring really. I find machines that are simple tend to work forever. It looks like it's well engineered and well made, bearing in mind that it is a budget machine. The housing is stainless steel and it's mounted on two rubber feet to reduce vibration and noise. The machine itself is designed to run with plastic barrels, not rubber barrels, and that's to reduce costs. It's got two steel rollers, front and back, and they're rubber coated to give grip for when it's turning. And the rollers, the steel rollers, are mounted through nylon bearings or nylon bushes actually. The machine itself is belt driven. It's driven by a round belt on the side, and as you can see it's pretty loose, and it's designed to be that way. And in fact in the instructions it does tell you not to attempt tightening it, because that will destroy the motor and what have you. There are no switches or controls on the machine itself. Turn it around. So to turn the thing on, you simply plug it into the electric and switch it on. That's it running. Put a barrel on. And to switch it off, you switch it off. So there's no speed control, there's no timer. It comes with a set of instructions which are pretty clear and easy to understand. It tells you, there's a little section on maintenance of the machine, and that tells you to put oil here on each of the bearings once a week, it says, and then once a month put a drop of oil on just here where the motor comes out of the housing, and that's the only maintenance that seems to be required. There's a little section on problem solving. A lot of people have occasional problems with these machines, and usually it's down to the fact they haven't read the instructions. There's also a set of instructions on how to use the plastic barrels. Taking these caps on and off seems to be a problem for some people. I've been playing with them for a bit now. I've bought a few plastic barrels and I don't find it a problem. I actually quite like the system. When you buy this machine, you have the option of buying, you can just buy the machine with a barrel, or you can buy it as a kit. And with the kits you can buy a set of grits and polishing powders and a bag of rocks to give you your first tumble, and that might be a good idea. Another option is to use smaller barrels. This machine has a £3 barrel, which you can put two 1.5 pound barrels on it if you want. The actual machine, as you can hear when it's running, it's almost silent. If you put an empty barrel on it, it's still pretty quiet. So I've filled up the barrel now with rocks as per the instruction book. So it's filled with rocks and water and silicone grit. It will get quieter as it creates slurry and the water thickens inside, but it's still going to be reasonably noisy. And what that means, I think, is that if you're in a situation where you can't put this in an outhouse or a garage or away from where you're living, then you should think about getting a machine with a rubber barrel. So within this instruction booklet, there's also a set of instructions on how to tumble stones, and it tells you step by step what you should be using and in terms of grits and what have you. And what I'm going to do now, I'm going to do a complete tumble with this machine, following these instructions as closely as I can, exactly as I can. And I'll tell you what I think of the machine at the end of that process. So here we are. I've been running this beach rock tumbler now for 32 days. I've followed the instructions on the booklet to polish a batch of pebbles from my beach. It's been running non-stop all that time. All I've done during that period is to oil the bushes and the stop ends, and as everything else, nothing else, I've done nothing else, it's just run perfectly. So how did I find it? Well, if you remember, I had reservations at the beginning about these stops where the barrel, it stops the barrels moving sideways. In this case, these were so sharp, they were actually wearing a little bit of the barrel cap down. But in actual fact, after a couple of weeks, that stopped being a problem, and now I can feel these, and they're not very sharp at all. They've had the edges worn off of them, and it's ceased to be a problem. The motor is only a 15-watt motor, which I was a bit worried would be underpowered. But in practice, you know, it was no problem at all. I mean, this is quite a heavy barrel, fully loaded, and in fact I did weigh it, and it came out at about 3.5 pounds, 3.7 pounds, something like that. So it's quite a heavy load, and it didn't seem to bother it at all. And the other thing is that swapping the barrels over is a faff. These lids you have to heat up to pull on and off. And that's a bit more of a faff than a rubber barrel. And it's not the sort of job you can get a child to do because you're using hot water. I would quite like this base to be a bit wider, just to give it a bit more stability. On a hard surface, it's not a problem at all. But if you want to set this on carpet to damp down the noise, it'll start to rock slightly. And the only other thing is that, unlike the Chinese machines, these machines are built with bushes rather than bearings. So there's a question mark over how long they'll last. But having said that, the machines run quite slowly. It would take quite a long time to wear out a bush at the speeds these run at. So what are the pros? First of all, it's a British manufactured machine, which makes it something of a rarity in my experience. Trying to find anything made in Britain is like, you know, looking for hen's teeth. It's also, interestingly, the cheapest £3 rock tumbler I could buy anywhere. And that gives you a great option, because there is a version of this machine that's sold with two 1.5 pound barrels. And if I was buying another one of these, that's the option I would go for. And in fact, I think that would be a really great option for someone buying their first rock tumbler. Because one of the problems with a single barreled rock tumbler is that the whole process is slow. You know, you have to wait for the whole process to go through from start to finish before you see the results. If you have a twin barrel machine, you can obviously, your first, you've got to wait the 4 or 5 weeks for your first tumble to finish. But after that, because you've got the second barrel, you can be running another ones, close on the heels of that. And you could probably end up getting a finished batch of stones every 2 or 3 weeks, rather than every 4 or 5 weeks. The fact that it's a simple design, as I say, you simply switch it on at the wall switch and it turns on, is also an advantage, I think, because I've found that with most of the machines I've ever owned, when they go wrong, half the time it's going to be the switch or the speed control or the timer. And this doesn't have that problem. I think if this goes wrong, you're going to be able to pinpoint the problem fairly quickly. The other advantage to this British-made machine is that you can actually buy spares. You can buy new rollers and you can buy new bushes and you can buy new wheels and so on and so forth. You can't do that with Chinese-made machines. The other advantage to the plastic barrels, by the way, is that they are cheap. And as they're cheap, as the plastic barrels are so cheap, it does mean it's quite within most people's reach to have one barrel for each stage of the process, which is something a lot of tumblers, once they get into it, that's really what they want to do. And again, you can't do that with rubber barrels unless you've got really deep pockets. The fact that the barrels are a bit of a faff to change over, and I've read quite a lot of comments about that, I think that's down to the fact that people just aren't thorough enough. I found it perfectly simple and straightforward. As long as you take your time and do everything properly. And throughout the whole process, I never had a leaky barrel, I never had the lid drop off, and I never had any problem at all. And in fact, at some stage I'll make a video about handling the plastic barrels and how to work with them. The booklet is very clear, it's in English, which is, quite an advantage nowadays. And the process that it sets out for tumbling is pretty sensible and certainly appears to be written by somebody who knew what they were talking about. So, did it tumble the stones? How did I get on tumbling my stones over that month? Well, I think we got on pretty well, because here they are. I literally did what was in the instructions within a few days. The polishing stage I left in for a couple of days more, simply because I was busy. But I don't know if you can see these, but they've got a beautiful polish on them. Terrific variety of stones. And out of a £3 barrel, this is a lot of stones. If you look at this number of stones, I think you could easily cope with 2 barrels, the 1.5 pound barrels to start with at least. And you really enjoy yourself running them through and not having quite so many stones to handle and deal with. But they worked really well, and it's a really, really good polish. So, what do I think of the Beach Rock Tumbler? Well, I think it's okay. I like it. I think value for money wise, it's very good. As I say, especially if you get the twin barrel version. It's reasonably well made, it's reasonably well put together. You have the backup of being able to buy spares and send it off for repairs if you need to. It runs quietly and seems to be pretty reliable. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this, and I hope it's been of some use to you. If you did enjoy it, please give me a thumbs up. I quite like those. And if you're feeling kind to poor old destitute stonemasons, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you again for watching, and happy tumbling. Take up rock tumbling, it's a great hobby.